Hey everyone, this is Kieran from MSK Physio, and today we're looking at some entry-level movements for your hip to work in the frontal plane. So that means abduction and adduction, and it's a really useful area to rehab, particularly with groin injuries or pain on the outside of the hip. So if you've had any of those, then give these exercises a go. When we talk about abduction or adduction, so abduction or adduction, we're talking about movement in the frontal plane. And what the frontal plane is sideways movement. So it'd be movement, me going sideways like this. Now our hip has the capacity for triaxial movement in all three planes. So that means it can spin, it can go forward and back, and it can go sideways. After a lot of groin injuries or injuries on the outside of the hip, or even just after surgeries, people will lose capacity in moving their legs in and out this way. Another time though that those legs, that area is moving is that when we land, our hip is going out to the side here, or when we push off, our hip is being pushed out here into abduction. So you've got two movements where actually you're accepting weight into the hip and you're going into an adduction or you're going into an abduction. And there's other movements going on as well in the other planes, but it's not just about always looking at the foot moving is the idea. So not just that pendulum there, it can be an inverted pendulum where it's going that way. So a nice spot to start reintroducing these movements is on the ground. Reason being for that is the ground will keep you in the frontal plane, and it also takes a lot of stability requirements out of it. So we've got exercises where we can lay on our front and on our back. On the front, it's probably going to be a little bit more biased to muscles on the outside of the hip here. And then on the front, cut. When we talk about adduction and abduction, so AD or AB, we're talking about frontal plane movement. And frontal plane movement is when we're moving sideways in space. So it could either be the foot moving this way, so it's moving towards the camera, staying on this line, or it could be from the other end where I am moving across my foot and the hip is going into adduction right now. This angle's getting closed, this one's opening, or when I push off and my leg goes into abduction that way, and this side's now closing and this side's opening. Now there's other things going on as well in the other planes of movement, but if you've had a hip injury or you've required surgery, then you might be starting off with some little entry-level exercises, or if you just haven't rehabbed your hips after old injuries in the past, then you want to start visiting this sort of exercise territory first to see if you can actually do these things, particularly under a little bit of load. So for the abduction side of things, you can lay on your front or your back. If I was just going to lay on my back, we're talking about the ability of the legs to open and close this way. Now, it might seem like a pretty innocuous movement, but depending on where I position myself, say I arch my back, that's going to be a very different experience through my hips than if I close my back down into the ground. And that's just because of the relationship that the hip has with the joints above and below. Something beyond the scope of this video, but to start with, if you put a band around your ankles, and it's going to make quite a long lever arm, just meaning that there's going to be more work required than if it was, say, around your knees. And you open and close. The reason these exercises are really nice is because by doing them on the ground, you take away all the stability requirements and you also stay truly in that frontal plane. So what it'll do is it'll really help you reveal if you've got some deficits in these areas, and there might be a difference front to back. So we laid on our back, going onto our on our front. This is going to bias some different muscle groups, not hugely, but a little bit. So that's our abduction. It's a lot easier to create movement in abduction just because with adduction or adduction, where we're going in, you have to really either start from a way out and come into the midline, or if you're already at the midline, there's a leg in the way stopping you to go further. Where a lot of exercises will start with that is squeezing isometrics. So you could put like a pillow or a ball between your knees or your feet. You could flex your hips, or you could straighten your legs out. It just depends on which groin muscle you might have hurt. If your knees are more flexed, you're going to be getting the groin muscles higher up. If your knees are more extended this way, and your hips more extended, then you're going to be getting a little bit further down into some of the other adductors, and there's 5 of them. But you would start with squeezing something between your knees, or like I said, between the feet. And you just squeeze, 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 or you could anchor a band out to the side as such and pull into the midline. So entry-level exercises, you might find that adduction or abduction are different from each other. One is easier, one is harder. They don't necessarily have to have an evenness to them, but look also to see if you have a one-sided difference. Maybe your left hip is weaker than your right. But nice and easy exercise. If this is too easy for you, then move into some of the sideline options. If you like this video, then please hit like below. Otherwise, to check out more of our content in the future, you can subscribe to our channel by clicking our logo over here. And to check out our latest video, click up here.